for part one, I really put Dr. Wooden on the spot. I asked for the 5 things that she knows now that she wished she'd known when she started teaching writing online.
Number 1, it is extremely time consuming. It is marketed as a thing that is a time saver. It is marketed as something that is convenient for students. And I think it is thought of by young faculty as something that's going to save them time and add convenience to their lives as well. It does neither. It's extremely time consuming.
What?
Yeah. Well, if you think about the time it takes to say something to 20 people and the time it takes to write it 20 times.
That's true. And I think also young faculty, especially if they have children, may think, well, I can do this at home.
Yes. You need a lot of concentration, you need a lot of quiet, you need a lot of time, and you need a really high-speed internet connection. The other thing is, if you're going to, say you're going to give a quiz, or you've got a free write prompt, or you're going to do some sort of exercise when you get to class, you can, in a seated classroom, literally keep the prompt in your head. You can literally jot it on a scrap of paper. You can type it in no time. Or on Blackboard, you can open a quiz module, and then you can write a question, and then you can submit the question, and then you can set the settings for the question, and then you can move to the next question. Write another prompt, and submit it, and wait, and then set the settings, and then wait, and it just is exponentially more time consuming.
There's a lot of details you have to think about.
A lot of details. Number 2.
Yes.
It is very weird regarding timing. If you're trying to have a conversation, if you're trying to have anything that resembles discussion, you've got to consider the online space as weirdly temporal. It is not like the give and take of real-time conversation. The slowed down pace might work very well for some written activities, like workshop, where you can submit drafts on your own time, you can read those drafts on your own time, you can write comments and give them back to your classmates. That may work very well with the slowed down time. But if you need to, say, brainstorm, if you need to say, how about this one? I read the reading and I've got these questions, or I think this is right, is it? In the online space, we're all functioning in different moments in time, and sometimes you're just posting and then waiting, and then somebody else comes in and responds to a post, and then more days may go by. By the time somebody responds to the response of a post, they may be way past it in terms of their thinking. They may not even need an answer anymore. They may not remember what they were thinking when they wrote the question anymore. So the temporality is really, really strange. And I'm not sure I've ever figured out how to resolve that well, but it is something to keep in mind.
Of course, you can always, it is something to keep in mind. You can always think of it as a strength as well, because having the asynchronous conversations that you're discussing from the discussion board or forum, that means later on in the semester, when students have fresh insights, they can return to the conversation and really benefit.
Yeah.
So that's the plus side of it.
And I like having a record of the conversations, where you really can go back and see what it is that you've talked about and what points you haven't talked about. And you can make specific reference to things that have been said before in a way that is very concrete, which is, better than a traditional class.
What else did you wish you'd...
Okay, this is new to me. This is new to me.
Oh.
I think you can't, as a teacher, use quite the same voice that you might be accustomed to using in a seated class. I have a sort of a gentle and friendly voice. So if somebody says something that I don't agree with, I very seldom, never say, no, I think you're wrong, right? I say, well, it's interesting that you would say that, and I especially like the part of your comment where you said this, and then I will redirect the conversation to the thing I think they should have said.
Student-centered pedagogy way.
And it is genuine, it's not artificial, it's genuine, where somebody makes a comment, and you pick out what is most productive and build on it. But if I, just like jokes in email, right? Mm-hmm. It's not interpreted the same way in writing as it is when it's spoken. So if you write that, well, I think that's interesting that you say that. Here's the part I especially like. Verbatim what you would say in class, the student will not understand it as criticism of their idea. They will understand it as praise of their idea. So if somebody says something that is 70% inaccurate and 25% accurate, and you, in responding in writing, praise the 25%, you haven't communicated at all about the 75%. Well, I hate to say it, but I've become far more well, strict. I've become far more strict. So I have to say now, I don't agree with that part. I don't think you're right about that part.
So
I like this part,
you kind of have to, could you like change the order of how you say it? You start with your thesis first. That isn't working, and here's why. Even though it's working, I like the way you. So you change, if you change the order, do they get it?
I think so. I mean, I'm experimenting with it this semester, and I'm trying to do a kind of I don't agree when I agree when I don't agree. I don't agree that the best strategy here is to do this because I think this is what's going to go wrong with it. I agree with the inclination to go this other way, right? So instead of just eliding the part where I disagree, which I think is evident to the people in my seated class, I have to state, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a very good idea. I don't think that's the one you ought to pursue.
Well, let's go to number 4.
Okay, number 4. So I guess it's a kind of a combination of the first 3 things, but it means that what you imagine as teaching becomes very clearly designing plus telling plus responding, and you're not always sure that it adds up to teaching. I think in the seated class, when you are designing and telling and responding, it feels like you are teaching while you are doing all of those things. You don't get confused about those discrete parts. In the online class, you first design, and then you tell, and then you respond. And when you think about the student and what they are actually getting from you, and you realize how far away that student is and how little you can tell, right? Whether those things add up to teaching can be a little, you can feel uncertain about it, I think.
I think I felt pretty much the same way. It's what I call the crickets factor.
Yes.
At a certain point, when we're face to face, and there are some students in this room, which is so helpful.
You're so good. See, I'm looking at you I'm so good.
But at that point, where face to face, there would be the students, all I get is crickets. In the background, far away, and I have no idea what people are thinking or reacting. It's disconcerting.
And that ties into my 5th thing. And it sounds like all of these are negative, but when you ask me what I wish I'd been told, it's the stuff that I found out that was negative. Online teaching can be very lonely. It can be very lonely. If you really thrive on the energy of the classroom, you may find yourself feeling sad when you're teaching online. Because you pour as much of yourself as you ever do into the teaching, and nobody says anything back to you. You say, here's my class, here's my enthusiasm, here's the video I made showing you all my enthusiasm, here's my hours I spent commenting on all your posts. Crickets. Crickets. And understandably, because they have moved on, and because they're at home, and because they're working in the middle of the night, because they're tending their babies or whatever they're doing, they're not in the moment sharing the energy with you. So you don't blame them for that exactly, but it makes the experience of teaching, the overall kind of vibe of your semester, I think, very different.
Let's flip the positive. Even though you've learned these 5 things, you're still teaching online
I still do it.
by choice.
Try harder every semester.
So could you speak to that a bit?
Well, I am always, I'm a problem solver.
Okay.
So if I see things that aren't going well, I am determined to fix them. So I try every semester, I tweak things, I change things, I try harder. And I try, in some sense, just to get used to what it is, to just feel less lonely and to recognize that that is my emotional state in my classroom. That's not necessarily a failing of the classroom, it's just apples and oranges. But I also, I started doing more with video. I say hello and goodbye to them every week. I make these little videos that recap the week, and I make videos that say hello. I have every semester created more stable tools so that setting up every semester is easier and doesn't take as much time because I'm not having to do so much invention, and that gives me more time to respond, which I think works well. You know, in 3 or 4 years when the class structure is really pretty stable and I just barely have to tweak every week to launch it, then I can spend almost all of my time responding, which I feel like is going to seem more like teaching to me.
That kind of sounds like fun to me. And this is a good time for us to take a deep breath and pause and get ready for part 2.